Hi student, in this second video, I will get right into grouping factors, okay? So, why do we call it a grouping factor? The name, the topics come with the way we do it, right? So, because it's a grouping, I'm gonna divide this expression. Number one example, I have 9 a.m. plus 6 a.m. plus 3 p.m. plus 2 p.m. So this whole expression have 4 terms together. But this is the polynomials. It means more than 2 terms, more than 3 terms. So in this case, it's 4 terms, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. This expression algebra is very complicated. We will try to condense it. Okay, so factor means we condense the expression. Instead of expand, we condense them, right? Tie them, pack them. But whatever we do, whether we multiply them, we expand them, right? Instead of we condense them, they have to be an equivalent number. They have to be equivalent letters and the same expression, right? So I'm going to divide this expression into 2 groups, and that's why I call grouping, right? So I'm going to group the first number, the first term, second term in 1 group, and I call number 1 group. And I'm going to group the third term and the fourth term into the second group. Now, let me deal with 1 group at a time, right? So in the first group, I'm going to just deal with the first 2 terms. And I ignore the second group for now, okay? I just look at the first group. When we do grouping, make sure if we do 1 by 1, we look at the one we do and we ignore anything else so that we don't get confused and we don't mess them up, right? So let's just look at the first group for me, ignore the second group. And we're going to do general common factor, the same like the previous lesson. So what is the rated common factor for the number in here? This number is breakdown become 3 times 3. This number breakdown become 3 times 2. So the rated common factor appear in both 2 terms here is number 3. So I'm going to pull down and make it become 2 brackets. That's how we factor, right? So the first bracket will contain the common factor. What is the common factor for the number? Number 3. So I pull it down and I put in here. What is a common? Now we look at the letter. What is the common for the letter? We have A in here and we have A in here. So this A to power 1 is the same common factor. So I'm going to pull out the A and put in here. And of course, the power have to be the same, and they both the same. We don't have to deal with the power in here. Everything is power 1. That's good. So now we have 3A. That is a rated common factor. We put it out. We put in the first bracket, right? That's how we do general common factor. Now, what do I put in here? The second bracket. Of course, I have to put 3, right? Because 3 times 3 is 9. I get back to the same, so gotta be 3. Do I need to put A? No, because I already have an A in here, but I have to put M, right? 3M, because that's how I multiply. I get back to that. 3 times 3 is 9, 9 AM put together, 9 AM, right? Next, I'm going to put the plus sign from here, from that, plus, right? From here, put it here. Make sure you have a sign between the terms, right? So the plus sign. What number I put in here? 2, because 3 times 2 is 6, right? A, I already have A here. I don't need to put it, just the N. Now I close the bracket. So this group 1, I factor, and I'm done, right? Factor mean break the expression into 2 terms, 2 brackets, in such a way that when you multiply them, you get back exactly the same that group 1 expression, right? So let's do the next group. don't forget between the two roots, you have a sign here and you have to put it down. Okay, don't forget the sign, right? It's the sign is very important in math. So plus sign, put it down. Okay, and that's why I draw the arrow for you to see. You cannot miss it. Okay, now let's do the common factor in here. In here, you have 3 times 1, this is 2 times 1. So the only number common is number 1. And for number 1, we don't have to write out, right? So I'm going to break this into 2 brackets again. And the number 1 go in here, but I don't have to write. What about the letter? The letter in common is B. B appear in both terms, so B is the only common factor in here. So what go in here? 3, of course. When you tie, you get 3 BM like that, right? Now, this is plus sign, put it down. There must be a sign between the two numbers. What is the number going here? Of course, number 2. And the letter B already here, you don't have to put B, but the N is going here, right? So now you done the first step. This is step 1, which is we divide them into 2 roots and we do general common factor for each group separately, right? At this point, you will say, oh, I'm done. No, not yet. Factor means you try to condense the expression in such a way that as much as possible. The same like you reduce the load fraction. You have to reduce until the end, until it lowers fraction. Same thing like here. You have to keep factoring, keep factor until you hit the bottom, okay? So let's look at what is the common factor in this expression now. You see it's still very complicated, right? It's not condensed enough, okay? So what is a common in here? We have 3A, we have B, they're not common. We have 3M plus 2N, we have 3, actually I'm missing the M in here, sorry. M is supposed to go in here. We have 3M plus 2N, right? 3M plus 2N. So 3M plus 2N is the same. 3M plus 2N is the same. For the next common factor, we can pull it out again, right? So look at these two expressions. They are the same. I said, oh, I can pull it out again. I'm going to make a 2 bracket again, right? Like that. So the common, treat this as the whole thing, okay? So this, treat them to think that this 3M plus 2N is one number, right? This is the same, this is the same. We're gonna pull this out and put in here. That's a common factor, we pull it out. 3M plus 2N. Now what left over, we factor them into bracket in such a way when we multiply, we should get back the whole expression like this, right? On the way from here to here. So 3A, we put in here, plus sign, put it down, plus sign. We already have 3M, 2N. When we time, we should get back to the whole thing group 2 here, which is the B. At this point, you are done. You make it become 2 symbol bracket, right? You keep the first time you factor, you still see something in common, you continue to factor, you pull it out, you break it into second bracket until when you get back, you should have everything the same like this, okay? So let's check. Let's check. The first time we check for you, the second time I don't check because I know that what I'm doing is correct, right? But let's check the first time. So we go from here, equal this, and then equal this. So now I'm going to distribute these 2 brackets for checking to see if I expand them, I multiply these 2 brackets together. Do I get back to the first expression like this? So 3M times 3A, which is 9 AM, right? Put this letter and this letter together. Distribute the second arrow. I got 3m times b, which is positive times positive is positive. 3mb, put them together. Now I go for the bottom arrow, go to the second item from the first bracket. 2n times 3a, positive times positive, they are positive, right? Which is 6an. 2n times b, positive as well, they are positive. 2n times b is 2nb. So that's how I expand to top arrow to bottom arrow. When I multiply these two brackets, I factor, I can expand them, become the original fraction. Now let's look at it. Is this expression down here for checking out when I expand is the same like the top? Let's check one by one. 9am, 9am. Plus, check the side as well, right? 6am, 3mb. Okay, so I multiplied wrong. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, 3 times 3, 9am. Oh, 6am is here, right? So this is correct. 6am, I have 6am here, correct? 3bm, 3mb, bm, mb the same, right? Correct? 2bn, 2nb, same, right? The order of the letters doesn't matter, right? nb the same like bn, same like that. So everything is correct. So that's how I do grouping factor. If the first example you don't remember or you don't get it, you don't understand it, don't worry, because learning is take more time than we think. The first example I show you, you don't get it, but keep watching, okay? Now I'm going to show you the second example and the third example. At that time, you will feel more comfortable. You will understand better. For the first example, everybody get confused, okay? Don't worry. But I hope that you, at least to give you some idea, okay? So I'm going to iterate this and I'm going to show you the second example and you will understand better as I keep going, okay? So let's do quickly the second example. So again, the topic still grouping factor, okay? So the next example will be xm. Now I'm going to put in the letter xm and no number, xm minus xn. Now we're going to factor only the letter, and the only number we have in here is 1, number 1. And number 1 we don't have to write. ym minus yn. Okay, so I'm going again, the first step, you see example 2, I have 4 terms. I'm going to divide them into group 1 and group 2. I'm going to divide them, okay, into 2 groups. And that's why I call grouping, right? Group them into 2 groups. Now I'm going to look at the first group and forget about the second group. I'm going to do one by one. I'm going to pull out the general common factor from the first group, right? So factor means you break it into 2 brackets in such a way when you combine them, you multiply them, these 2 brackets together, it should get back everything the same, right? That's how we learn the factor. Okay, so what is the common in here? Number 1, of course. What about letter? We have x in here, we also have x in here. So the x turned out to be a greatest common factor we can pull now, right? So I'm gonna put x. What to go in here? Of course, it gotta be m, because when I combine, I distribute them, I should get back to the first term, xm. I'm gonna copy down the negative, right? Copy it down, follow it. What do I put in here? Of course, I have x already from here, x. So the leftover is n, I put in here. It means when I distribute the second arrow, I got minus xn exactly like that, right? So that's how I factor the first root. Now, this between the two roots have a sign, whether it is positive or negative, you should always copy it down and don't miss it, right? So I'm going to copy the positive down. Now I'm going to do the general common factor. I'm going to make it into two brackets again for the second root. What is the common factor in the second root? Y. So we have a letter Y in both terms. It means the letter Y is a common factor. What about M and N? Of course, they're not common. One is M, one is N. We cannot pull it out. The only number we can pull it out is Y, right? Letter. What do I put in here? Of course, got to be in letter M because I want to multiply them, combine them, and get YM, same, right? Copy down the negative sign between them. What the number I put in here, of course, is going to be N because Y times N will be YN, and the sign will be positive times negative, negative, right? So that's how I factor the first root and the second root. But the task is not done right here because if you look at this 4 bracket, the first bracket X, Y, they're not the same, they're not common. What about M minus N? What about M minus N in here? Are they look the same? Exactly the same, right? M minus N, M minus N. So it means that you can find out another common factor and factor again, right? Don't stop right here. Keep factoring down until you cannot go further anymore. That's the rule in math. Okay, so now we see this is M minus N. M minus N is another bracket in common, and treat this bracket as the one number, as a whole thing, right? M minus N, M minus N. Treat them as the whole common. So again, we continue factor, mean we're gonna put them into two brackets, right? Two bracket and pull out the general common factor. What is general common factor in here? M minus N, M minus N, put it down. This go in here, right? Because it's common in this first term, it also common in the second term, right? So M minus N can pull it out as a common factor and put in the first bracket. What go in here to second bracket? Of course, number X, right? Left over from here. When we combine these two brackets, we get back X time with M minus N, exactly X time M minus N. So that's how we do. Now, plus sign, put down plus sign. What go in here? We already have M minus N, we put here. When we combine to the second number, we should get back to the same thing here. So Y go in here, right? So it means you pull out the M minus N as a common factor, put in one bracket. You look it back, X left over, put in here, put that side down, put side down, the sign, plus sign, and put the Y in here. So now you multiply, if you distribute this two bracket, and I check the first time, when you time one by one, you should get back to the whole thing here, the whole expression in here. And again, I don't want to waste time to check again, right? Because that's how to show you multiply polynomial, which is the last topic. We already learned that, and you should know how to do it. If you don't know how to do, you get practice on your own. You do it. I checked the first time, I'm not gonna check this to save our time, okay? So now I'm gonna go to the next example. So I give you 3 examples and hope you understand this topic, grouping factor. Okay, before I go for the third example, I'm going to summarize this again, right? So, given 4 terms, I'm going to group them into 2 groups. That's the first step I should do. Putting two terms in one group, another 2 terms in another group. I have group 1, I have group 2. That's the first step. Second step, I'm going to factor each group separately. I look at the first group without looking at the second group. Now, factor mean break the first group into 2 brackets in such a way when I distribute them together, I should get back to the first expression, right? Which is the first group here. So I'm going to break it into 2 brackets here. And I look at the common letter in here is X and X. I pull it out, X as a common factor. What left over go into second bracket. The M go in here. The minus sign go in here. And the N from here go in here. I close the bracket. That is, I do the general common factor, which is the previous lesson for the first group. Now I factor the first group already. I'm going to go and do the same for the second group. Now I look at the second group. I copy down the side between them first, right? I break into 2 brackets. I'm going to look for the common, read the common factor and put in the first bracket. And the rest of common factor in here is letter Y, Y and Y, right? So I pull it out and I put in here. Left over, it go in the second bracket, which is letter M, minus, the N go down here. So now after I do grouping for each group separately, I look at the common factor again to see I still can factor it or not. So I look at this X, I look at M minus N, I look at Y, I look at M minus N, I discover, oh, M minus N is the same. So I treat this as a whole number, as a whole thing, as a whole one number, M minus N. M minus N is common in both groups in here. So I pull out that common out as a rate, the common factor, I continue factor. I make 2 brackets again, and I pull out the common. I put in the first bracket here. This go in here. Left over is I. I put an X in second bracket. The plus sign go in here, and the Y go in here. So now I'm done. I finished. If I doubt about what I'm doing, I can check, right? I can expand them. I tie them together, right? I tie these 2 brackets together. I span it and see if I get back to the first original, and I should, okay? But to save the times, I'm not going to check it, okay? I'm going to go to the third example for you, and I hope in the last third example, you understand this topic well. And you need to practice. So copy down the question, redo it on your own. That's the way you practice. So if you don't have time to copy everything I'm doing, you just watch to understand how we do. Then all what you do is copy each example, copy each question, right? Copy just the example so you don't miss, and then try to do it on your own. Unless you can do it on your own, it means you absorb the lesson and you understand how to do it. If you just watch, is the part of important of lesson, of course, but you don't practice, you don't redo it by yourself, you still have a hard time to get it, okay? So I strongly suggest you copy the question down and try to redo it again. And if you have my video, if you don't do it right the first time, no problem. You rewind the video and watch and see, oh, what did you miss? What error you made? Then that's how you learn, okay? So I'm going to erase this. and give you the last example for this topic of grouping factor. Keep in mind that I only teach one topic a whole week. So you learn this one topic of lesson in one full week, right? It's not a very fast speed as on. But because we just learning online, so I try to reduce the amount as much as possible for you to digest, and for those behind can catch it up. Okay, I'm gonna go to number 3 now. The number 3 example. So let's see what example I can do. Okay, I'm gonna give you a P and Q example plus 4Q minus 2P minus 8. Okay, now in this example, exactly 4 terms like the second example, except notice you have a negative in here. So the previous one I give you easier because it's positive, everything positive, you're not worried about the sign. But in this case, we have negative, so gotta be careful with this group, right? So we have negative. Okay, let's see how it works. I will divide this first step, always divide them into group, and that's why the name go with it, grouping factors. So I'm going to divide this into 2 groups, right? 2 groups. And this is the first group, I mark it. This is the second group, I mark it. Now, look at the first, ignore the second. We have a positive sign in the first group, so it's easy. We're going to look at the common letter in here and common number in here. Common number, of course, is 1, right? Because that's the rated number you can have it, 1. But for number 1, you don't need to write it. It doesn't matter, right? We know it's got to be 1. What about letter? We have P and Q. We have Q only in here. So the Q turned out to be a common, right? So the first group will factor into 2 brackets, right? 2 brackets. And we pull out the common factor in here. The common factor is the letter Q. So we pull out letter Q, put in here, okay? What left over, the P go in here, plus sign go in here, number 4 go in here. And then we're done. We know that when we combine, we time it, P times Q is PQ, 4 times Q is 4Q, we're okay. So now we're gonna factor the second group. Unfortunately, the second group have a negative, so we have to be careful, right? But anyway, I'm gonna copy this negative down here, okay? Negative. If it's positive, I put positive. If it's negative, I put negative. Exactly the same like that. These are the sign between the 2 groups. I cannot miss it, okay? I'm gonna open the 2 bracket again to factor for the second group. Now, what the common number and common letter in here? For the number, the common rated common is have to be 2. This is 2 times 1. This is 4 times 2, right? H is mean 4 times 2. I can break it down like that. And the 8 here have a common 2 with this common 2, right? So I'm gonna pull out the common number, it means 2 in here. What left over, I have P, right? So let's check. 2 times B and negative 2 times P is negative 2P, which is I have negative 2P. Exactly, that's fine. Now, let's put the negative down here. Okay, if I follow it, I put a negative. And what number I put in here? Of course, number 4, right? Now, let's check. Negative 2, right? Make sure because you have a negative here, when you distribute into this number, you have to count for what number is that. This number is -2, right? Even though it's outside the bracket, but it means negative times positive is -2. -2 times -4 will be +8. That doesn't make sense because we have -8. We don't have a +8. So if we don't do something with the sign, when we time -2 to -4, we get it wrong, right? The number is the same, but the signs are not the same. It's not the same number. A -8 is a lot different from +8. So it means we have to twist this side become positive, even though it's negative, but because the -2 here, dealing with this, we have to check it, right? This is -2 times with +4. Now, because we distribute the whole thing, it will become -8. And thus, now will be correct, right? So be careful when you have a negative like that. You know this negative will distribute to this number 2, become -2. -2 times p is -2p, correct? But -2 times -4 is not -8. To make -8, we have to twist the sign in here, which is positive. So negative become positive. So that when we distribute, we have -2 times +4, different sign time together will become -8. And exactly we have -8 from here, okay? So by checking the sign, you know that now is correct. Okay, so now let's continue. This still look very messy. We're gonna have to condense it in 2 brackets. Keep factoring down until we cannot go further, right? What is a common in this expression? Q2, not common. P plus 4, P plus 4. Oh yes, it's common, right? And mark it. So it means we can pull this common out again and break it, become another 2 brackets together. Okay, so what common go in here? Read the common factor, which is P plus 4, P plus 4 go in here, right? This bracket and this bracket in common, we pull it out as a common factor, we put it in first bracket. What left over, Q go in here, the minus sign, minus the 2 go in here. So now we're done. Okay, now the last example, and I'm going to check it for you so that you believe me. Believe that I'm doing it right. Okay, so I'm going to try to check. And how do I check? I'm going to expand this number to see if I can get it back to this first general expansion, right? Original. So P times Q, right? First item from first bracket, time with the first item from the second bracket. P times Q is PQ, right? PQ, put them together because they're letter. We don't know what number are they. The only way when you multiply them, you put them together, okay? When they side by side, it means they time together, right? PQ. Now distribute the next arrow, P times 2, positive times negative is negative, 2P. Now you're done with the first 2 arrow, you go to the next item, do the second arrow at the bottom, right? 4 times Q, positive times positive, positive, 4Q, put them together. 4 times minus 2, positive 4 times minus 2, minus 8. Now let's check. PQ, yes, we have it. Check. 4Q, yes, we have it. 4Q here. Minus 2P, yes, we have minus 2P. Minus 8, minus 8, correct. So all of this expression, when we expand our factor, we get it back the same like the first expression. And that's how we factor in the correct way. We break we divide them into two groups, we factor the first group, we factor the second group. The last step, we look at again to see if they still have any common. We can continue factor, and this is our last step, our final step. We break them into bracket. We got the first bracket is p plus 4, right? We pull it out from here, we pull it out from here, just one of them. And so you have two of them, right? But when you put them in bracket, it become a common factor. It's become a common, you pull it out. And the q go in here, the minus 2 go in here. When you expand, you get it back to exactly the same. So that's how we done this lesson. We call a ripping factor. I'm going to leave a few minutes for you to copy this example down, and I strongly suggest that you always redo it again after you watch the video. So anytime you watch it, just watch. You don't need to take notes, because when you take notes and watching at the same time, it interferes and you don't get it. You will confuse. But after you watching and you copy it, right? Then you redo it again in your own way, and you rewind the video and you check if your answer matching my answer to figure out if you're doing it right or you're doing it incorrectly. You catch up your errors and you will be always on right. If you carefully, math is required patience and careful. I'm not really very careful before, but when I learned math, it trained me. It helped me to do things in small details carefully. Okay, so now I will leave a few minutes before I end the video. So to save time for you to copy it down. I hope you will practice on 3 questions again, and you will be able to do the assignment I posted, the quiz for this week. We enter the 6th week. So please try to catch up, students. If you have some overdue assignments, I still leave it open for you. But if it's too long, I'm gonna have to close it, right? I have some students did so well for this factor thing, and I'm very happy about the way you working hard, you at home, but you try to learn and you get everything correct from my video only. So very good. It's inspired me to keep teaching you, to keep making video like this to teach you. And I can see that sometimes I can send you a YouTube video if they're good, but sometimes they go very quick, a lot quicker than me. So I would prefer to do the video for you. I go slower. Okay, so good luck, student. I'm going to end the video right now.